Welcome to Sean's Thoughts. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to be here for another one of my Sean's Thoughts podcast where I talk about essentially whatever comes up in my mind, or not my mind because mind actually stands for memory integrated network device. So maybe we'll start right there. See, we live in a world that is very different than we could, or perhaps I could have ever imagined we were living in. I believed we were living in a world of elected politicians and, fair systems where everyone had opportunities to essentially do whatever it is they chose that they wanted to pursue. That as long as we put our all into something, that we were actually able to essentially succeed on an equal playing field. And yet, over the past few years, I've come to learn about the enormity of different secret groups that we can call societies if we wish. Not much of a society anyways, but nonetheless, different organizations that essentially controlled from the shadows, from perverse areas where no one else could perhaps see that they were pulling the strings, almost like Geppetto of Pinocchio, as if he was the puppet master, that these groups have essentially dominated and controlled our world. And they didn't control our world with just simple, policies and regulations and bylaws and laws and mandates and all those other lovely things. They also used technology to control our world. I've recently, or not recently, but some time ago, I always love all the distortions that come at me. The guy has absolutely no reason to peel out, but he peels out as I'm about to say something. And essentially, that kind of flows with what I was going to present. And that goes back to the word mind. See, we have had a lot of different technologies, and not technologies necessarily that we can put in our hands and hold. I'm meaning technologies that were to some outlandish, that seemed far-fetched or even futuristic. Actually, what they would often do is they would create sci-fi TV shows with these technologies in them so that when we brought them up, and when I mean we, I mean the Homo sapiens and those who are awakening, that when we brought them up, we would be considered fools because society would be like, oh, I saw that already. It was on Star Trek. Oh, I remember seeing that on that movie Jupiter Ascending, or on that movie The Matrix. And so, they were required essentially to show us what they were actually doing, helping them co-create it. They also did it essentially to create mockery when we were to go out and talk about it. And back to what I was saying about technologies, that there are technologies that we're unable to, with our visual spectrum that we are limited to see. And one of them was called the mind. And that was, as I understand it, or it was explained to me by Kim Gogan from the GIA report, it was something called the memory integrated network device, meaning that this particular mind had the ability to control us. Now, in the book, which is called The Untethered Soul, Michael often talked about the little voice inside our head that's always going at us and always thinking of something and questioning and wondering and pondering and self-doubting. And it's almost like a narcissistic energy sometimes that just won't shut up. And I can definitely relate that to this mind technology that was perhaps installed or overlaid within us. See, if we prescribe to the idea that we are in a matrix, and that is essentially how I've seen it since I watched the movie in 1999, walked out of the theater stupefied by the sudden revelation of my world, since that time, I have essentially associated the world we live in as to be a matrix. And in that time, the matrix, as a result of watching that movie, was more solidified into the concept of it being material, being that the matrix was this box that I lived in. never did I imagine that there were overlays and synthetic technologies and other different things that would perhaps allow me to see something standing right in front of me that wasn't actually there. Somewhat like an NPC in some cases, but also Agent Smiths in other cases. Beings that had consciousness, that had a desire to follow an objective, an operative perhaps. And you see, the mind, from my understanding, was a technology that did exactly what Michael had said in his book, Untethered Soul. It manipulated us to a degree that we were forever struggling to move forward. And, well, I don't know where else I'm going to go with that one, but I'm back up to looking at these beautiful cherry blossoms. You may think that my thoughts are perhaps chaotic, and I'll admit, honestly, they are. And it's because I allow them to flow. I allow what I think to come out. And I think that is a big part of manifesting. See, for a long time I was tricked into, and I use the word tricked with an underlined and a capitalized T, believing that we essentially had the ability to manifest the desires and thoughts and things that we wanted. And yet part of those hidden technologies were limitations put on us. So not only did the mind manipulate us, but as I came to understand it in a report about a year ago, we also have different technologies installed within our body that perhaps create cortisol. I've heard that the gray matter, or we can call it the reptilian brain, i.e. the Draco reptilian perhaps, that this technology, or soft technology more so, perhaps updated firmware programming, was there in order to perhaps separate our left and right hemisphere of our brain. It was put there in order to, when we started to create those synapses that went from, or the neurons, the firing of the neurons that went from the right to left hemisphere, that in a sense was stopped by utilizing the release of cortisol in order to create that stress hormone that would essentially keep us distracted and in a state of perhaps fear or any of our other low vibrational energies. Now, I'm not saying that those low vibrational energies are always bad, because actually God used them in a pretty magnificent and strategic way. And, you know, this isn't really telling a truth or a secret that most people don't know, yet we've always come to the understanding that our trials, or those things that we are forged by, the challenges that pop up in our life, they actually make us considerably stronger. Me, myself, and I have become so much stronger than I could ever imagined a year ago. A year ago, I remember listening to this podcast that Carrie Kay had put up, and she had talked about what was going to happen over the next 6 to 8, well, almost to a year, because it was a year ago, that we would experience in the later part of 2025. Within the duration of 4 months, we would experience the time frame of, or was it 6 months? But anyways, in a short amount of time, or shorter, we'll say it's 6 months. Okay, within 6 months, we would experience approximately what we would have experienced within a year. And then in the coming months, 4 months, we would experience what we would have experienced within another year. And then the part that we've actually just gotten through, and I say gotten through because, you know, we're on the other side of so much right now, so much beautiful, beautiful, new blooming, just like all of these lovely cherry blossoms that I utterly love. Anyways, over the last 2 months, it's as if we have went through another year of the experiences that we would normally have went through. I recently decided to look across the headlines because there's this new channel that's coming up in my feed by a man named David Fraser. And he's using an AI in order to bring together all of these different news clips from all of these different places, I guess, or news broadcasts. And anyways, he's brought up a lot of different topics that have been happening over the last 6 to 8 months to do with our political sector, to do with the world economic systems, to do with the job losses and the essentially all of the chaos that's happening out there. And he's doing a fantastic job bringing all this information together. And yet so much of this information seems to be snowballing every day. Every day, rather than it being every week, a new headline of mammoth-sized proportion comes out. So the one that I found out today was that a company called Home Depot, which is a big box corporation in North America that essentially put out of business, I'll say thousands of mom and pops, as we call them, retailers of home hardwares and such. Actually, they put out Home Hardware too, which was a smaller organization. Nonetheless, they've had severe job cuts, as I can see it, at least by what David Fraser is reporting on his channel. I did do a quick search on the internet, and surprisingly enough, information about this idea is pretty far in the feed. It's mostly on the second, third page, meaning that there is obvious manipulation of what either I'm able to see or what other people are able to see. And see, that goes right back to what I was saying before about the considerable amount of technology that is being used. AI isn't just being used in order to do people's homework or create your schedule or remind you when you need to go to the washroom or whatever it is that that those people are using AI for. AI is also being used for a considerable amount of manipulation. See, you can set up an AI, for example, and then AI can do a lot of things. Now, we believe that we are protected by firewalls. We believe that we're protected by, these different antiviral programs. Keeping in mind, though, that those antiviral programs were perhaps made by the same people that created the virus and then created the solution to solve the virus, and then already had the hack and the back entrance in order to get past their own technology. So nonetheless, there is so many different types of technologies and influences, whether we look into the world being, a little more demonic than we could ever have imagined. If you want to see an amazing example of how I've come to understand, I could say, true reality maybe, or at least the reality that we're living in within this matrix, I definitely recommend going and looking into a game called Devils May Cry. This game shows a really great example, and I've mentioned this before, about how the lower astral could essentially be overlaid over top of reality, that there were beings that were walking around within the halls of buildings that were essentially in a different vibrational frequency than the actual Homo sapiens, or in this case, humans, that were living in the world. So this show, actually I think they might have actually created a show. I'll have to look into that. But this game franchise by Capcom called Devils May Cry is definitely something to envision. And you can just go onto YouTube right now or after the video is over, whichever one you choose. And you can, look for a trailer of the game, and I'm sure that they're going to show you. And if you've actually played the game before, you will definitely have a far better understanding of how I've come to understand the true nature of our reality within this matrix. And I use those words specifically because I believe that, as I've mentioned before, that true base reality is organic, source-given God. And maybe that's a segue into what I truly wish to talk about, because although I desire to share all of these explorations that I find, I also believe that we are moving far beyond that right now. Like the white flag, that's way gone. Their opportunity, and I say they, I mean those people who control our world, or cancel, used to control our world. They are far removed from any ability to do most of the stuff they do. Now, I do see that out in our world, there is a lot of chaos. But as I've mentioned before, as Shakespeare said, life is but a stage. We are all merely actors. And I think what he was talking about is the families that claim to run the world and their political actors that go along with them. I'm going to let this heavy truck by. As I said, this intersection suddenly got very, very busy. I decided today I didn't really want to go out further out into nature because I wanted to admire these beautiful, beautiful cherry blossoms. But anyways, back onto what they believe. So they, as I've defined it, those who thought they controlled the world, well, they're no longer having that authority or that ability to override our agreements any longer, or essentially override our free will and convince us as easily as they once did to get us to be less than we truly are. And what we truly are is of God. I've mentioned this in my video, which I'm going to link at the end here, called I Am of God. And it's a short explanation, and I say short because it's shorter than most of my podcasts. It's a short explanation of who I am and what I have come to understand. See, I hold off on using the word believe because to believe to means to hold an opinion. That's another example of how they've manipulated our world. And as I said, it's not just through technology, it's also through our language. So when a lot of people spout off about what they believe, it simply means they hold an opinion on something. And I have faith that humans, Homo sapiens, are of God, that we were created of God, that we are perspectives of God. I was once delineated or explained in depth the difference between aspect and perspective, and it truly did resonate with me, that we are essentially able to see different variations of how the world is, and perhaps that's what God originally intended us to do. Well, it's essentially what it has been going on, and he has seen us, and I use he as a, it's a pronoun, it's something that I've been essentially programmed into using. Nonetheless, God, the source of all things, is a omnipotent being of immaculate and beautiful presence. See, the other day I had this amazing experience. When I woke up, it was raining outside. I had my window open. I could hear the pitter-patter of the rain. And immediately the first thing that came to my mind, because I love rain so much, it's always raining here. I love it. I love living in this temperate rainforest. I can't wait for the trees all to grow back however they want. Definitely all the fruit trees. Nonetheless, I lost track because I started thinking about the fruit trees being everywhere. Anyways, so coming back to God. God is, that was my story. So I woke up and I heard the rain, and the first thing I thought to myself was, thank you, God, for the rain. And then I remembered a passage from a book I was reading. I'm actually reading the 12th book on Paul Selig's series of channeled texts. And in that book, he explained that we'll have a better understanding when we see everything as of God. And so quickly, promptly, almost instantaneously, actually, I remembered that as if I was being tapped on my shoulder, and I remembered that God is the rain, and God is the cherry blossoms, and God is, me and you, if you're Homo sapien. And God is all of the organic, beautiful life that exists on our planet. And since we've been stuck in this artificial construct called the Matrix, a simulation, if you will, that we have essentially been put on a hamster wheel, overlaid by things that block what truly is. And I've come to see that God isn't outside of ourselves. God is within ourselves. And perhaps our strongest connection to God is that inner sun that I was talking about yesterday on the podcast. Our soul, our essence, the beings that we are, that we're all composed of God, that we are within God, that we are of God, and God is essentially seeing through us. And so I don't really know where I was going with that. I had this idea, and I actually had many different ideas when I was walking here, and I thought I could say many different things, but as I've mentioned before, when I sit down and I talk, I just simply talk. The things come through my mind, distractions, drive by and honk their horns, or big dump trucks come by, or whatever it is, and distraction upon distraction, I just keep talking. And if I do get distracted to the point that I lose my concentration, I just say, oh, well, I guess I'm supposed to talk about something different. And so let's talk about something different. What shall we talk about? Sometimes it's just important not to talk. And yeah, yesterday there was this lovely woman in the comment section who mentioned that I should do more of my do no thing videos. So interestingly enough, I found this amazingly beautiful scene of ivy that was of immense amounts, and it had essentially twirled itself around the base of several trees, and then on the branches of the trees above there was so much moss. Like, when I took this video, the actual scene I was looking at with my eyes was so vibrant, and the contrast between the light greens and the dark greens and the decaying greens and the reds and the water, it was just so magnificent. Unfortunately, the video that I put up, while it is beautiful, it didn't exactly capture the full essence of that scene. Nonetheless, I was essentially inspired by Gabby to put it up. And I put it up, and it's doing amazingly well. It's actually doing far better than most of my videos have been doing in quite a while. There has been an awful large amount of suppression, and perhaps I'm co-contributing to that by repeating it often. See, I look in the analytics on my YouTube channel, and often I'll see videos where they suddenly spike 100 or 200 views in the first short little few minutes or within the first hour, and then all of a sudden they go down to 0 views. I've also had videos where the impressions in the first hour are 2. Like 2 impressions being put out by YouTube within the first hour essentially mean the end of that video because people are unable to find it. Of course, I realize that I'm living behind a firewall and that there are beings, matrices, technologies, operatives, whatever it is you want to call yourself, blocking my expression from going far out into the world. Actually, when I first started my YouTube channel, I did a lot of marketing and advertising. I truly wanted to unify the world. I believed that we had a lot more ability at that time than I later came to recognize. And I essentially targeted's the wrong word, but it was targeted advertising. I marketed towards Bangladesh and India and Japan and many other countries, I guess Iran as well. And I had wanted to essentially bring people together from all over the world. I've always been an international traveler up until getting married. During my late teens and early 20s, I traveled to many different parts of the world. I traveled and backpacked across China. And when I mean backpacked across China, I actually mean I went from the east to the west. No, actually, yeah, I went from the east to the west. I visited Beijing. I visited Shanghai, Fuzhou, Wenzhou, Suzhou, Zhongzhou, so many different Zhous. I traveled up the Lijiang River in a raft. I did so many different adventures there. I also backpacked across Japan. Actually, I went to Hiroshima one day for lunch. You see, in Hiroshima, they have this thing called the Shinkansen, and it's called the bullet train in, well, English language. And it's a super fast train that goes over 200 kilometers per hour. And, there's really no reason why Canada and America couldn't have had that if it wasn't for these big corporations. Nonetheless, I was able to see an awful lot of Japan, and I also backpacked across the northern portion of Mexico and so many other different places in the world. And I truly do wish to get on the road again, seeing things I may never see again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. That's one of my favorite songs. It was from a TV show where this dog would travel all over the place, and he would always stop somewhere and help some people do something, and then he'd get back on the road again and he'd have a lot more experiences. And that's been a fundamental song written within the code of my DNA of who I am. Nonetheless, I would truly love to get back on the road again and see things that I've heard so much about. I mean, continents that we didn't even know existed, cities that we didn't know existed, capital cities of the world that we didn't know existed, underwater cities, underwater pyramids. Did you know, and this is actually in mainstream archaeology, we'll call it, there is an underground pyramid off the coast of Japan? Like, they've taken submersibles underneath there, and they've actually shown video footage of these. Well, it's a pyramid. It's a different pyramid than you'd think of when you look at the Giza pyramid. Nonetheless, it's a pyramid. And there's actually underwater city that has been discovered underneath the south of India. And that connects to their holy text that talks about a great war where there was that remnants of a city. And there's reminiscences of civilizations in between the UK and France within that water area. There's so many different places around our world that I truly do want to travel there, show it to everyone, and, maybe even lead groups there. Just simply to go there and do no thing. Record some videos, do a podcast or two, share some time with some friends, and, explore. I want to go to the DUMBs, which they're called deep underground military bases. Now, I would imagine a lot of them are empty now since, God, the source of all things, is winning this war that's happening right now. Nonetheless, I would love to see all the different beautiful and amazing technologies that, we have yet to even comprehend, with the exception of what we saw on our predictive programming called Star Trek and Star Wars and all those other shows. So it's actually, the rain's getting a little heavy now, and I think I've been, taking your time, and I've been taking your time. Definitely I know what I'm saying, and the words that I'm speaking hold immense value for those who are able to hear it, for those who are able to perhaps listen to it a few times, because I recognize that I speak quite fast. And so if you have the opportunity, I highly recommend, I ask that you please join Patreon and see if you can actually find my posting. I put up my last posting a few weeks ago. I was posting on there quite often until I realized 0 people were actually even looking on my Patreon page, leading me to the idea that perhaps it was fake. So I encourage you, you can go on there, you can join for free. There's no reason to pay, although if you'd like to, I definitely have different options there, because I would like to fund a lot of the initiatives that I have in my Blueprint series of Shone's Thoughts, where I talk about all of the different projects that I would love to do. But regardless of that, if you are unable to, go on there. If you're unable to join for the money part, go on there and just join up for free. Look to see. I put some of my photography there. It's a wonderful community that I definitely wish to grow into a thriving civilization, we'll call it. And, perhaps one day we can all get together under a beautiful cherry blossom tree and sing songs by Dermot Kennedy, one of my favorite musicians. So thank you so much for sharing your time and attention with me. And I look forward to sharing a lot more. And when I say sharing, I also mean hearing what you have to say. So definitely take time to come out of the shadows and to comment, as did Gabby did yesterday. And her comment essentially inspired me to return to my Do No Thing challenge videos, where I challenge you. No matter where you are, stop the car, pull over to the side, pull out one of those challenges and sit there in 3 minutes of calmness. I'm losing my voice right now. 3 minutes of calmness and just simply do no thing. Turn off everything. Turn off the Bluetooth, turn off the notifications, and just be. In one of the most interesting comments that I came across, because I read a lot of people's comments, they were asking the presenter of the video, which was Alobar, as he interviewed this person named Angel something or other. Nonetheless, in the comment it said, "What can we do as regular Joes?" And I commented back to the 15 or 16 people who thumbs up that comment, because there's a lot of people out there that are wondering, what can you do or what can we do? And what we can do is take time to ourselves. Learn how to relax. Learn how to release. Because as I said yesterday, when we release, when we relax, when we calm down and simply be, those technologies that I talk about, the entities that I talk about, the shadow self, if you will, they have less and less control over harvesting our energy, over controlling and manipulating our thoughts, over even perhaps their own technologies, the memory integrated network device standing for the word mind, or whatever it is they use to control us. And, it's also a wonderful moment of peace. And in that peace, that's when God, the source of all, has the ability to come in and speak to us more. At least that's how I experienced it. The more and more that I sat in meditation, the more and more I took those times, those moments to be calm, to self-reflect, the more and more I heard God's voice. And it wasn't a voice as in, me speaking to you right now. It was subtle gestures and guidance. And so that's perhaps the next move forward for a few billion people. Enjoy my latest Do No Thing creation coming out tonight. It's called A Billion Tears Fall Into One. I can't remember. It's a beautiful story that I put up in the actual posting. And so thank you so much for sharing your time, your attention, your love and support with all of these beautiful cherry blossoms and my voice. Have a wonderful day, and I trust and I have faith that we are all coming home. So much love. Thank you kindly.